everybody. My name is Leslie Ann Johnson. Welcome to this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. As you would have known, we sent out a notice saying that we had rescheduled to 11 o'clock this morning just to facilitate some other issues that were taking place. And we're talking finance this morning. We have with us the Honorable Gregory Bowen, the Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Physical Development and Energy, as well as Mr. Mervyn Lord, the General Manager of the Grenada Development Bank, Mr. Alistair Bain, representative of the Ministry of Finance on the Board of Directors of GDB, talking this morning about the loan fund facility for government contract workers being operated by the G. And of course, without ado, we'll hand you over to the Honorable Minister. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Good morning to Asian. Good morning to my colleagues here representing the Ministry of Finance and the Grenada Development Bank, and a pleasant morning to the listening and viewing public. This morning we are extremely pleased from the Ministry of Finance standpoint. We're speaking on behalf of the government of Grenada to advise the general public on this initiative as announced by our host this morning, a loan fund facility for contract workers. And this is one of the initiatives that we as government have initiated. We have listened to the plight of workers. We recognize that the contract workers have been asking and making certain requests, and we realize that something must be done. The Ministry of Finance is now engaging with the general public, advising them one of the steps that we have taken in order to alleviate the plight of the contract workers. We are committed to meeting the needs of workers throughout. We have done so over the Christmas, and at the last budget we saw persons being rewarded for the stance and for their commitment and what they have done for our country. We understand the challenges that these workers face, but the contract workers in particular, in accessing credit. And as such, this initiative, the loan fund for these workers, is one that addresses this plight with the intent to bring in some assurances to the workers who are affected. Although employed on a contractual basis, they should be able to access credit that would allow them to acquire assets that can help to improve their standard of living. The loan program, an extremely soft and flexible term and conditions targeting the ones who are unable to access credit elsewhere. So you may be a contract worker. This is a very slim chance, and you may be able to access funding elsewhere. So you may not be interested in this loan facility. But the vast majority of the contract workers, we believe we have listened to them and it suits their purposes. This has a capital injection of $10 million. We're prepared to put in tranches to see how it works by the government of Grenada to the GDB, who will be responsible for administering the loan. The facility allows for up to 30 years repayment period, or up to retirement age, whichever is less. It's an interest rate of 3% and an option for moratorium on interest and principal payment for up to 1 year. You'd have up to 100% financing. There'll be an easy application process, as government ministries will be collaborating to ensure that both information and fees and charges are kept to the minimum. The targeted beneficiaries are contract workers, imanis, traffic wardens, and in general, any contract worker who is paid directly from the government. And as with any financial institution, whatever the income will be passing through the government. And so the taxpayers can be guaranteed that as small as it is, even in collaboration with the individual worker, something could go back towards repaying the loan. That facility they cannot get anywhere else. The use of the fund, and it's primarily to do with assets. More explanation will come from my two companions here. So it is not for something that you'll go to fast cash for and pick up some monies to help you to do something for a month or two. Yes, it will allow you to acquire assets with a general aim to improving your standard of living. Other targeted initiatives for contract workers. Remember, this is the Ministry of Finance working together with the GDB, and I'm sure Mr. Lord will tell you how we came up with these things. We listened to the workers years before, and we followed what they have been doing, particularly with respect to approaching institutions. So it's not only GDB they approach the credit unions, they approach the banks, and we worked collectively with GDB taking the lead there in finding out exactly what they require, what will meet their needs. And so that's why we were able to target and say what the funds should be used for. The Department of Public Administration, you will recall that this is not the only plea of the contract workers. They're looking at their rates. They're looking at how they're treated in conjunction with positions in scale. Should they be paid commensurately for what they're doing alongside the public service or the public servants, appointed public servants, etc. So the DPA is working on this. So we will hear, and they have announced, the minister with responsibility for DPA, the Prime Minister, has announced that initiatives are being taken place in that department, and so they will make that announcement and in a very short order. This will help to address the salary structure and other critical terms and conditions. That is from the DPA standpoint. These measures must be taken in line with our fiscal responsibility law and are always under the scrutiny of the IMF, the World Bank, the FROC, and the ECCB, to name a few. It is enshrined in law that the percentage of GDP taken up by remuneration to employees in the public sector cannot cross a certain maximum, 9%. In that context, therefore, whatever DPA will be doing will be along those lines. And I could tell you we had an extremely important meeting with the IMF a few days ago, Prime Minister and myself, and they are zeroing in on these things. And we have made it abundantly clear that a lot of things and benefits that we get, in fact, we're doing a tranche of either. No. And they're investigating where we are, what we plan to do before financing will come into the government coffers. And they are also looking at how we have suspended, as you heard me mention in the budget, certain terms because of the environment that we're in, the COVID-19 environment that put a lot of strain on revenues. But that suspension has been there for 2 years. And it is of critical importance, and they made it abundantly clear that we start to live again within the scope of this fiscal responsibility law. So we relaxed it for 2 years. We have taken care of our people for a while, not to the extent that we like, but it cannot go on forever. I make these points for the contract workers in particular and the general public to understand that we have embarked upon initiatives as far as possible, to the maximum that we can, to help our workers, to help the population's children and the youth to move further. But in general, we have to do it within means. So those of us who do not understand and believe that we could go forward will see whatever we try to put in here, more and much more will be taken away. And instead of the country rising, the country will be sinking. So the initiatives that we propose must be along the lines of upward trend for the people affected, upward trend for Grenada, and in general for the economy. So I would very much like to hear again from the workers. We are in contact with them, and this initiative today should help tremendously in alleviating an immediacy for our contract workers. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. So we turn over now to Mr. Mervyn Lord, the General Manager of the Grenada Development Bank.
Good morning, Minister. Good morning to fellow colleagues around the table, the media, the listening and viewing audience, all good morning. Now, improving the standard of living of our people is of utmost importance, and we in the Grenada Development Bank, we are delighted to be part of such a very important initiative. Now, who can benefit? As the Minister indicated, government contractual workers. They have to be continuously employed for a minimum of 3 years. And we can extend funding with debt service ratio of up to 50%. I will zero in a bit as to what the funds can be used for. The purchase or construction of dwelling houses, including furnishing, fixtures and fitting, appliances, etc. We can purchase land for future home construction. So if you cannot afford to purchase the land and build at the same time, you can actually purchase the land to build in the future. The loan can also be used for legal fees, bank charges, property, insurance. But let me hasten to add, as it relates to legal fees, there will be a 50% reduction for the first 6 months. And the Ministry of Finance is currently exploring avenues for even further reductions. As it relates to the bank charges, there will be 100% waiver on bank charges for the first 6 months. So you would not have to pay any bank charges. The funds can also be used for upgrading existing properties. For example, renovations. If you want to build a downstairs, add a room or bathroom, including climate change adaptation and mitigation initiatives, such as solar water heaters, PV systems, retaining walls, water tanks and pump, etc. The Minister indicated that the maximum loan will be $375,000, and we think that is sufficient to give persons a reasonable piece of land and a house, and that is the maximum. The interest rate is very concessionary. It's only 3%. The Minister also indicated that funding can be provided at 100%. So basically, you can come in and get a loan without having to put down 1 cent. Then moratoria can be given on principal or principal and interest for up to 1 year. So let us say you come into bill, but you are renting at the same time. While you are renting, you may not be able to afford to pay the full interest or pay anything at all. And this program will allow for such. The Minister also alluded to the repayment period, which is maximum 30 years or up to retirement age, whichever come less. But I want to expound on a very important clause. And I want to zero in, I actually want to read it. It said that if the borrower becomes unemployed due to the redundancy of the contracted position or for similar reason that are not performance related, the accrual of interest will be suspended for a period up to 12 months or until gainful employment is obtained, whichever comes first. Now, this is the first in the industry. There is no other institution, financial institution, that has such a caveat within their loan program. So what does that mean? If, for some reason, based on redundancy or otherwise, you are no longer employed, while you gain employment, your loan will not be growing. Your loan will remain the same. There will be zero interest for a period of up to 1 year or when you get employment. In terms of collateral or security, if you are actually buying property or building a property, we will take a legal mortgage, first legal mortgage on it. Property insurance, that is for persons who are building. If it's just for land, you would not need property insurance. And life insurance, that is to safeguard your asset, just in case your demise, if the worst should happen. As the minister indicated, that the application process, we will try to have it as efficient as possible, as customer-friendly as possible, and it will be done through the Grenada Development Bank. And you can call us at any time, 440-2382, between our working hours, 8 to 4 p.m. You can contact us on our website, www.grenadadevelopmentbank.com, or you can link us up on Facebook or Instagram. So we have a wide medium that we can be contacted. Just some of the documentations that you may need, and as the minister indicated, we are trying to minimize the amount of documentation, but of course you will need your application form completed, and our able staff will assist you in completing that. Of course, you will need your recent job letter and pay slip. That should not be too hard to get. Normally, with all funding, we will need ID, two ID, picture ID. If you are actually building a house, of course, we will need a approved construction plan. So these are just some of the documents. None of them should be too hard for persons to obtain. So once again, this is a very soft and concessionary funding, and I think it will do well for contractual workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lord. Mr. Alistair Bain, representative of the Ministry of Finance and the Board of Directors of the GDB. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you, Leslie. Good morning, Minister. Good morning, Mr. Lord. Good morning to the viewing and the listening public. And of course, very special morning to members of the media who are engaged on this morning's conference, cabinet briefing. Let me add, the minister did make mention of this being one of several initiatives taken on by the Ministry of Finance and the Grenada Development Bank. Just to add that since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, government has been engaging with the GDB to provide financial relief and funding to some of our most vulnerable, to some of our most challenged sectors of the society. We had the micro and small business relief fund, over $14 million committed for financing to the micro sector through the GDB. We also have the Small Business Development Fund, where an additional $10 million have been injected since the onset of COVID-19. And with this initiative of $10 million for the contract workers for financing mainly for mortgage and asset accumulation, we are now looking at over $30 million being invested through the Grenada Development Bank, injected into the local economy for relief to our most vulnerable individuals. As indicated by Mr. Lord and by the Minister, the interest rate of 3% is not comparable to any within the financial sector at this particular time, with interest rates ranging from 4.5% thereabouts at the lowest and spiraling to as high as 13% in some institutions, and taking into fact that interest rate is normally driven by risk, and risk, especially for mortgage and that type of financing, is normally driven by job security. We are talking here about contract workers who would normally be at the upper end of that trajectory. So on a normal financing, if they are able to access financing for this sector, you'll be talking in excess of 10% for mortgages. So this is indeed concessionary when compared to some of the commercial financial sector. As it relates to the other initiatives, although we are here mainly to speak about this particular program, we have the small and micro sector loans for businesses, where persons can access up to $300,000 with up to 3 years of grace on principal payments. This is at 1% interest. It cannot be better. 1% interest with a maximum loan of $300,000 with up to 12 years for repayment. $14 million have been committed by government of Grenada to this program. We have the Small Business Development Fund with loans up to $40,000, 1% interest again, 3 years grace on principal payment, and up to 10 years for repayment. It cannot be better than this. So what we are seeing here now is a total injection of over $30 million since COVID into the local economy to provide relief across all sectors now, including that of the housing and mortgage sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Colleagues, good morning to you joining us via Zoom. So you've heard from the Honourable Minister, as well as Mr. Mervyn Lord and Mr. Alistair Bain. GBN, you're first up. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, Gerard. This is GBN. A question, clarification. There is a moratorium plus the provisions for the 1 year relief, or in terms of until that person is gainfully employed. Is it a choice? What's the direction there? And a question specific to the minister. You would have highlighted that part of this project is based on the fiscal responsibility law, but the law is presently through its clause temporarily relieved. So is it a benefit to the program? What does it do in terms of going forward, in terms of spending more money on such a program or others like it?
I think the question is two-part, one for me and one for somebody else, right? Let me take the one that he's talking about. The initiative is based on law. Now, what I mentioned is the fiscal responsibility law must be followed in looking at other aspects that's to do directly with remuneration of the contract workers that DPA, Department of Public Administration, is working on. This initiative is an initiative from the government, and all that we'll have to show is that it will benefit the persons, the sector, and at the same time, it will improve the economy. So the loan financing is something that really it will come in terms of budgeting and the Public Finance Management Act, which gives the government the authority to do certain things, and this is obviously one of them. And we indicated that $10 million have been approved. Of course, we'll do it in tranches. We'll give the Grenada Development Bank the first tranche, and hopefully we think the workers, the contract workers, will take it up quickly. We'll give them another tranche that we think the contract workers should be taken up as quickly as possible. So I'll pass it over to the other gentleman. Now, of course, if I did not zero in on your question, I expect a repeat so that it can be clear to me.
Yes, so if I can come in on the other part of the question, I think we talk about freezing the payment and freezing the interest if someone lost their job. and it's up to 1 year maximum or when the person gain employment. So if the person gain employment before 1 year, then it will be up to whatsoever time they gain employment. But 1 year is the maximum.
That's it from you, Gerard. All right, MTV, good morning. Nancy McGuire, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Could you give us an idea of how many contract workers we are dealing with here? And I'm still not clear on the fiscal responsibility law and the 2-year clause in that law. Could the minister just explain further what's really going on with that for us? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a repeat of the first question that was not too clear to me then. Now, the fiscal responsibility law sets out parameters that government cannot contravene. And I was referring to the Department of Public Administration in proposing another initiative to help the contract workers. That has to do with their pay structure and how much it will impact the overall government's overall with respect to payment to workers. The law states that you cannot exceed 9% of your GDP. If you do that, a lot of things will start to come down upon you. Besides not receiving the generous assistance from the international community, a lot will be removed from you. So we have suspended 2 conditions in that law. There are many conditions because of the COVID-19, and that with the general acceptance of the international community. One of it is which that you cannot increase your spending from this year to next year under certain categories by more than 2%. That is to keep you on target, to keep all of us on target. We suspended this, and we suspended another clause in order to give us room to spend in certain areas on the safety network, because our people lost jobs and so forth. So the quantum that we have, that we can spare areas because of the 2 conditions that we have relaxed. And the law provides for the relaxation. 2 years, you have suspended it for 2 years, 21 and 22. What we are saying now, we have to manage now, because these will come back into effect. And now we will be more tightly constrained at the end of the 2 years, which is the end of 2022. Yes. To give you an idea of the number of contract workers that we have within the system paid directly by government, we're just about 1,700. So a significant quantity of workers could benefit from this program. And while 375,000 will deal with land and buildings, remember, we also indicated furniture, other appliances necessary to improve the lives and livelihood of the contract worker who must rush out from home, maybe without a good stove, perhaps not a good fridge, things to do along those lines. So all of them will be coming for the 325,000. Many will come for 20. You, the public, know the general cost of a seat of furniture or a fridge or certain other items that will be deemed very necessary, so that the workers, himself or herself, can be able to produce more, because they're outside of the stressful environment. They can prepare and leave home earlier. They can be more productive. So you might say, well, 5 million, 10 million But if people are taking it up, I believe that the representatives who vote on monies will definitely, we from the GDB and the Ministry of Finance will make our representation, and we would ask them, for more. We know we're in tight constraints, but I do believe that once it goes well, and I want to ask the contract workers that the public, will be looking at them. It is the taxpayers' money, and so we should all work to show the public that we're using this beneficially, so that at the end of the day, not only the economy benefits, but the service to the people will benefit. And they should no longer be looking at contract workers. Some look at them, well, they're just taking up space, but they're providing a service. That is why we have embarked on this initiative.
Thank you very much. Linda Straker, good morning.
Good morning to you, Les, and the panel. Minister, just to stick on to what Nancy would have been asked about. Out of that 1,700 contract workers presently in the system, much in preliminary projection qualify to receive such a loan? Because I think it's Mr. Lord would have explained that you have to be in the system for no less than 3 years, 3-year contract. So out of that 1,700, how much presently, when you look at the figures, they qualify to receive such a loan if they want it? Now, what will happen if the contract workers do not immediately grasp the opportunity? They may have other conditions. They probably would have somewhere they would have gotten assistance and they have to pay. What would have happened? Would it be extended to other persons in private sector, or it is just strictly for government workers? That's my 2 questions for now. I do have more, so I hope I get a second one.
To start with your last question, thank you for them. It is strictly for government workers within the system. Once you see, you must be, no matter how small it is, then you'll be earning something from the taxpayers. And so we'll be working with you, but at the same time, we'll be able to sit and get a small amount from you so that the loans do not become what we call toxic assets or bad debts and so forth. And I do believe that the contract workers will work with us in ensuring that they pay what they can. The GDB will look at the various circumstances and we'll look at the plight of the workers and work with them. That's why we set it up and we pass it through the GDB.
She also asked about how many qualify. Okay. All right. So we're moving on. Nisha.
How much? I asked about how much qualified out of the 1,700. Can I receive an answer, please?
Yes, Linda. We'll get back to that shortly. Just bear with us. Nisha Paul, good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Can Mr. Lord, can you elaborate a bit on the bank's ability to offer the low interest rates? I think it's 3% at this time. And also, can some more be given on the arrangement between the government and the GDP to allow for this initiative at this particular time? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your question. I think the reason why we can do that is because there is not a cost from the government. So the funds are given from the government at 0% interest. So there is no cost to the fund. Therefore, we can, and that is why we are providing this very concessionary rate of 3%. So it's a fund that is provided to the Grenada Development Bank to administer on behalf of the government. And as a result, there is no cost involved. Thank you.
If I may add to that, just to say that for any fund placed by the government with the GDB, there would be some reporting requirements. So that GDB would provide periodic reports to government to assure it of how those funds are being utilized and to ensure that it is on point in terms of the purpose for which it was disbursed. So that must be noted also.
And in general, from that report, we will see what it is costing the bank to administrate the fund. And we will not leave the bank, out of pocket. The interest paid does not go to the bank. It goes to the fund. But the bank will say, here, we have expended X sum. We have to get 3 more employees because we want to be very efficient. We do not want the contract workers to lay claim that, I'm over here, I've made application and it takes days and so on, or even months to get a response. So in that context, we will say to the bank, this is your cost, you take it out of the fund. It is unfair to ask GDB to do things, and not be paid for it. That is the reason why you pay it an interest, So from the interest, we can get something to administer the loan fund. So 3% is very small, and we're saying that may just take care of the bank's administrative cost.
Nisha, can you repeat your second question first, please? All right, so
Okay,
let's go back to Nancy Maguire. Nancy, you have another question? I'm sorry, Nisha, good morning. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. My second question was for a bit of elaboration on the arrangement between the government and the GDB to cater for this initiative at this time. I think it was partially answered.
All right, thank you. So, colleagues, once we have the information on how many of the contract workers qualify, we will get that to you. The Government Information Service will get that to you, of course, getting that information from the Ministry of Finance. Nancy Maguire, you have a question? All right, GBN, good morning to you once again.
Right. Questions for the minister. Minister, with the whole issue on the increased waiver in terms of megawatts, some people have seen, while most are saying that they have not seen any reductions on their bills. Can you explain what could be the rationale, and if we will be seeing any relief for the majority of Canadians on their GreenLink bills? And just a clarification, how long is the waiver expected? Is it permanent? Is it temporary? And in terms of shares, where are we with that? In terms of diversity into Canadian people?
Thank you for your questions. With respect to the 25% of the non-fuel charge, together with the reductions in VAT, we indicated that this will come at the next cycle. That was in December, and the cycle, I'm sure, should have started this month, and I will definitely inquire as to at what point in time. But certainly our expectation was that you will see it from this month. You are saying that you are not seeing it in the bills. And remember, GreenLink bills, when the cycle starts, it will start for a period. So some people may get old bill up to the 18th, and from the 19th, new bills will start for them. So at least a small sector of the population should have seen the new cycle. And you have indicated that it is not seen by anyone. So definitely the Ministry of Energy will get into contact with the GreenLink for an explanation. And they might put out their own statement advising the public, which I think they should do when you should see this or when the cycle starts. Okay. Oh, the shares in GreenLink. It is always there. We said we're doing an evaluation with respect to an evaluation of the company and the valuation of the shares. We all admit that the shares are the price awarded to Grenlec for the purchase of the shares has no bearing, on the actual value of the shares. This is why we've told external persons who made application, you do two things. You would apply, but it is only up to the Grenadians, really, that will be, the Grenadians will be given access at a lower price than was paid for it. No, we're not at the stage yet to say that we put in the shares out, so let us get the value, let us get all that is there. We have completed one such a study on Grenlec, which is the condition of the asset. That will inform the valuation. So when we come out, we will tell the Grenadians, this is what you paid through a court award for it, and we believe that it is only the local Grenadians, and perhaps Grenadians in general, who should pay the real price for it, which could be something like less than half of what you Grenadians, what we Grenadians had paid because of the court order.
MTV, good morning.
My question is to Mr. Boyne. It is with regards to the cap on the gas price. Can you tell us exactly how long was that before? I'm not sure if I missed it before. How long will that cap on that gas price be? And what are the benefits for the retailers with regards to the gas price? Because one retailer is claiming that he makes about approximately 98 cents on each gallon. So the consumers are the one benefiting and not so much the retailers.
Thank you for your question. Yes, the cap on the gas price is really for the consumers because they're the one who pay the increases. For example, the retailer maintains his margin and the importer maintains his margin, and they pass on the increase in prices to the consumers. So we have pegged that increase that they can pass on. But if he says he's making 98 cents, he was making 98 cents for the last many years. Even if the price went up, his portion has not been touched and will not be touched because of the cap. What is touched because of the cap is the reduction in taxation that government receives. In other words, government is subsidizing that drop in costs. And we expect, we said 6 months in the first instance. For example, the price may come down to under $15 based on the move and the demand, the world market demand. So if it comes down to under $15, then government no longer subsidizes. But the retailer will still maintain, we assume that the 98 cents is correct, will still maintain his 98 cents. The importer, if he's making $1.75, will still maintain his $1.75. So he is not losing in any way. He's not affected by the increase in price, nor by the cap placed on it. It is the public, the businesses who have the trucks to run and so forth. They benefit. They don't have to spend that much. The consumer going to and from work, the buses carrying people here and there, they're the one, who are benefiting.
All right, thank you, colleagues. Nancy, do you have another question?
Yes, I do.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Can you tell me how many public servants we have? And could Mr. Lord please answer my question about the delinquency rate of loans with the GDB? Thank you.
Once we show we're the 8,000 range, and what is the definition of a public servant? Everybody who works with government. I think a legal definition posed once was those who get paid from the public purse. You will have many more than this if you look at contract workers and people who just been paid by government who are not considered public servants. And
Yes, just to speak on the delinquency rate, I must say that as a bank, we put a lot of emphasis in ensuring that our portfolio has a good quality, because that dictates whether or not we can get funding from regional and international organizations. Our NPL as at the end of the year, 31st December 2021, was 2.11. That makes us the best development bank in the region in terms of portfolio quality. There is no other development bank in the region with such a low portfolio. But I must say that our portfolio was not always that good. In the early 2000s, for example, our NPLs were over 40%. So it took a lot of effort. And we must commend our customers that are paying, because at the end of the day, it's the paying customers and the hard work of our staff in following up. That is what caused the quality to be how it is. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Linda Straker, good morning again.
Good morning. That Mr. Lord explained that government is giving the 10 million to, maybe I could say, want of a better phrase, as a revolving fund. Would the report from that be separate and apart from the annual report that the GDB presents to the Parliament, or will it be included as part of the report that is tabled in the Parliament annually? My other question is to the Minister. Minister, in 2019, the government passed a law in order to get off the European blacklist. We got the law to remove us as safe havens. This law would have become into effect as of January 1st, 2022, which is a few days ago. From my research, 50 companies were crossed over from an IEBC to register with the local office as corporate. Can you share with us what agreement or concession government provided to these companies so they can remain? A couple of the companies who were directly affected were those involved in the call center industry. So can you share with us what agreement or concession government provided to those companies who have now crossed over from IBCs to now being registered as local corporate body that will require them to pay local corporate tax?
Thank you for your question, and I could recall vividly some of the companies asking to clear the position with them, because some of them employed, as you say, call centers over 500 people, and they wanted to know exactly what will happen to them when they become local companies. One factor that contributed, we did not give them any special treatment. It was there in law already. If you're on your income in Canawan, that belongs to St. Vincent, then the requirement for taxation is quite different. You own it in Karakou. I put too close here so that you can understand. These call centers earn their revenues from way abroad, the Euro, the US. And so the requirement for paying the taxes in Grenada is much different to a company that lives and operates here. So when you look at what has happened, maybe there's something that we should have done already. So if you ask us what concessions we gave them, what they got was already enshrined in law. As a matter of fact, if we had given them anything that will take away from our revenues, then the international community will simply come to us and say, you can't be giving them here in one hand and coming to me with an open arm in the other. So they looked at it, and we had to explain that to these companies, and they switched over using that that condition in law. It means that we have to monitor merely to see that are they making any income from Grenada? That is what you'll be taxed at the same percentage as any other local company. So it will mean increased surveillance by the Inland Revenue Department. But and there were companies here operating in that manner already. They did not own the income here, so I'm not paying tax here. You have the double taxation treaty. That's some people that say, some of them, even if they own it here, because of this, they pay tax only in the country of origin, because you can't tax them here and tax them out there. I remember vividly, Timothy Antoine, now governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. That's way back in 2013, 14, when we approach many of these companies and say, you own revenue here. You can pay here or you can pay there. Why are you not paying here? And so you have to plead with them because, and so we got some of them to start to pay here. Respected of somebody may have earned money in the parent country, but because they have operations here, we say, well, pay something here and don't pay everything out there. So there were many laws there already for us to capitalize on to get many of these companies to remain in Grenada without expending or putting pressure on our fragile economy. Thank you.
Yes. So what we will do, we will analyze and communicate the performance of this program in our annual report, but on a separate section. And the reason for that is that this program does not form part of the bank normal loan portfolio. However, of course, we must report to the public. We must report to the Ministry of Finance, who is the sole shareholder. So that information will be part of our annual report, but as I mentioned, on separate section.
All right, colleagues, we're getting close to the wrap-up time. MTV, you have another question?
Yes, I have one question to Mr. Lord. Mr. Lord, I had engaged in a conversation a few months ago about COVID-19 pushing Grenadians to be very creative in terms of opening new business. Is it possible you can give me a report on that and how many of them thus far has taken advantage of the 1% loan?
Yeah, I must say that I'm so happy that Grenadians have become even more creative during and because of COVID. The initial tranche we got for the MSME loan was 9 million. There's a commitment to receive an additional 5 million. To date, we have committed over 9 million already. So based on the amount that we received thus far, we have over committed. I do not have the actual number of loans, but I can tell you in dollar value, we have committed all that we receive and even more, and we're just waiting for the additional to commit them.
If I could add here also, under the Small Business Development Fund, $10 million have been received since COVID-19, of which $5.6 million have already been disbursed, and another $0.8 million is already committed.
Nisha, you have another question, Nisha?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but how long will it take for the loan approval? And does this initiative take effect immediately? And finally, in terms of the government's ability to make the $10 million investment at this time, where is the money coming from? Thank you.
Okay, so the majority of loans will be approved within the bank internal loan committee. And the maximum time we have from application to approval is 10 days, 10 working days. I must say that, for example, last year, 99% of our loans were approved within the required time. Now, the objective is to do that even faster than the 10 days based on the quantums that we have. But 10 days should be the longest possible time once a loan is approved within the internal committee. And that will be loans up to $300,000. Loan beyond the $300,000 will go to our board. Our board meets once a month, but because mortgage is pretty straightforward, it is quite possible that we can get quick turnaround via round robin means.
All right, let me comment on this as well. Remember, when you make an application, you must bring in all the documents. You have an application with 2 documents missing, and you start to count the 10 days. GDB is not here across there. That is why we're asking the general public to be there. When you hear certain complaints, it is your right as a citizen to just call and whisper to somebody in GDB. Make this clear to people that they must bring in all their loan application documents, particularly those who have received within the 10 days. And that could be a problem because we want to monitor GDB on this one. We want to be as efficient as possible.
Colleagues,
She also asked about how soon the initiative would be kicking off. And I would say within the next week or so, the funds should be available and the bank should start processing these loans.
And where the money is coming from is coming from the treasury of Grenada. That's the way again. So we must give Inland Revenue and the Customs great credit, because even in the difficult times, they're not collecting as much as they do, and most of what they collect is expended. But we did say that you cannot operate without resilience. And what does financial resilience mean? It means that you must have a buffer. And in these times, you must stimulate the economy. So at the same time, we're helping our contract workers. We also move in the economy. The many millions you hear that when the businessmen take it, they move it into the economy. They employ people. They purchase goods and services from low and from abroad. And we always have a keen lizard eye saying, why can you buy it locally? We can't force you. But you say, why don't you buy it locally? It is these local people who put their money up for the state to be able to lend you $300,000 as a business. And I'm telling you, they're cooperating. So if they have to buy 20 items and they can get 6 locally, they will buy the 6 locally. So it's a combination of understanding the economy, of pushing where you can. Yes, the money is coming from you and I and the host and everybody's taxpayer. It is coming from the Treasury of Grenada.
thank you very much, gentlemen. So colleagues, our final 2 questions from Linda Straker and then GBN. Linda, go ahead.
Thank you, Les. Actually, I was seeking clarity based on my question to the minister earlier about the IBCs. Is it saying that these IBCs are now going to be paying tax in the country where they earn the money from? So if, for example, the call center is paid to a U.S. contractor, this call center now have to pay corporate tax according to U.S. law, and also pay some that the amount that they earn in Grenada if they do earn some out of Grenada. And I follow up with that. And in the 2022 budget presentation, mention were made of a couple of government projects that will be funded by CBI money. Can the minister tell us specific projects that will be funded by the CBI earnings? And in the December interview, the head of the CBI office mentioned that they would have gained, I think, 150,000 as of October. Is the minister now in a position to tell us in January the 25th how much government of Grenada earned through CBI for the year 2021? Thank you very much.
I don't know. I think the figures was 20 plus 10 US, 30 million US. Now you say 150. I wonder if you're not talking about the latest figure as opposed to what was announced, in the budget. To come back to the question that she asked. Yes, the IBCs. Now remember, we do not have any IBC on our books. That must go. As you indicated, so the IBC law is no longer in place. What they're following is our local law, with which the double taxation treaty kicks in. And so they recognize now, instead of dealing with us and not dealing with anybody, they will have to deal with a parent company and countries of residence where they were incorporated, and they deal with us in Grenada. So we are following the law. The Inland Revenue Department will be taxing them on revenues earned in Grenada. But we're saying at the same time, we're not sitting idly by. There's always a way that you could encourage them to pay some of the monies, no matter where it's earned, to pay it in Grenada. Because if you pay me in Grenada, you're being exempted from paying it in your homeland. That's where the taxation, double taxation treaty comes in place. There are many small projects in the budget, are being funded by the CBI, in the sense that you do have those projects that you'll see locally funded, and in the budget you'll see them. We have maybe about 20 of them being done. Many of the bigger projects are being funded, some by them, some from the buffer. And they're outlined in the budget 2022.
Thank you very much. GBN, final question.
Minister, my question, I think we would have missed in terms of the length of time in terms of for the 25% reduction as well as the VAT. Would it be permanent or would it be a temporary one-year measure? And second question to that is, we've heard of a major outbreak at a secondary school. Is it possible that you could shed some light on that?
The first part, I did respond and say 6 months in the first instance. And I did indicate that if the price of fuel comes down, then there is no need, because the general population will be paying less. And of course, you could build a buffer. Even if what they know can satisfy their needs, but they will be looking at financial resilience throughout. So 6 months in the first instance, it will be evaluated thereafter. And you were talking about the outbreak. No, sorry, the Ministry of Health is not here. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much, gentlemen, colleagues. So we've reached the end, and we'll give them the opportunity now to make some final remarks. I'll start with you, Mr. Bain, then I'll go to Mr. Lord, and the final words from the Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Leslie. And I would just like to add at the end of today's briefing that while the funds are available, and the funds will be available for contract workers, we also have to take into consideration that persons have to ensure that they practice financial prudence in terms of their capacity to repay those loans. And one of the challenges that we see across the sector is that persons sometimes bog themselves down with consumer loans and resulting in some challenges for them when they attempt to access loans for longer periods and mortgage type and asset accumulation type loans. So we would want to caution persons to take stock of their financing and to manage those. In addition to that, we also want to call to persons that these are government funds, these are taxpayers' funds. And as such, we would want to ensure that it's properly managed. So character would be a big component of that type of assessment in terms of the loan appraisal. Character in the sense of whether or not you have a history of repaying your loans when issued, even if you would have challenges along the way, but you have a history of showing commitment to your debt service. This is very important. And lastly, what I would want to add is one of the questions earlier alluded to the fact of whether the funds, if it's not taken up, whether it would be reallocated to other sectors. And I must just add that this program didn't happen out of guess. It is based on a demand coming from that particular sector. And this is government's response to that demand and that need of the contract workers that is now supported through this initiative with the GDB. And GDB has had a recent history, a recent track record of managing its financing and its loan portfolio. So we have no doubt that this would be another successful initiative of the government of Grenada and the GDB. Thank you again.
Thank you very much. Mr. Lord, final words?
Yes, I just want to say that we in GDB, the hard-working management and staff, and the board, what we want to do is really to expedite this program. To us, having money in our bank account does not make much sense. What is important for us is getting that money into the economy, to stimulate the economy and to improve the standard of living of our people. So in order to expedite the process, we will provide you with a list of information that is needed. What we ask of you is to expedite that information into the bank so that we can close the deal, if I can say so, very, very quickly. I want to conclude that when we mention, what we mention here is a loan program. We did not say a grant program. And when you talk about loan, the expectation is that the loan is repaid. And it's a revolving fund. So when we help you and you pay back, we then help your friend, your family, we then help others. So I want each and every one not to focus selfishly on your own self, but look at how we can benefit the entire population, the entire country. And to do so, when you pay back, we are able to provide further benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lord. Minister Bowen, final words from you?
Yes, so I just want to echo the sentiments of two colleagues here who articulated very positively and clearly the intention of the loan and call upon the recipients to repay. We don't expect hesitancy. Yes, great take-up. And you ask, how long will it last for? In 6 months, you should take all the loans, and then there will be a drop. In other words, by the time you pay back, as a matter of fact, the loan portfolio should have been exhausted because you're not paying back for 1 year. So there is not anything there for a period of 1 year, 2 years to say, well, there's a little bit coming in interest on repayment that we can use. So ideally, we want to say 6 months to 1 year, and this is completely taken up. In which case, we can make a plea from the Ministry of Finance to the Parliament of Grenada that this is working well, our people are benefiting. Can you give us provide another tranche? I want to advise that what we found out is that the students loan these same contract workers. And it is not under this program because the GDB already has a student loan portfolio. And that we will, give even more information on and see that the student loan is not only for contract workers, it's for all Grenadians. So we will expand it, and hopefully there are funds there. It will pick up. So some of the contract workers might say, I'm not interested in the homes, but I'm interested in a student loan. The facility is there. And while it is not the same initiative, we'll get the GDB to expand and give the same set of information, because we do know that people want access to student loans. The general public, I'm calling on you to be part of the program as well. Encourage the young people into what program they should go. Help them out. We will do that. The bank will do that, and the various ministries will be doing that as well. But when you participate and ensure that that they take the loan for the correct purpose, then we'll see the repayment being enhanced. It's all of us. It's all our money. So we have listened to the cry. The government has responded. the nation should now help to the GDB to administer this loan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gregory Bowen, Minister for Finance, Economic Development, Physical Development and Energy. Thank you as well to Mr. Mervyn Lord, General Manager of the Grenada Development Bank, and Mr. Alistair Bain, representative of the Ministry of Finance on the Board of Directors of the GDB. Colleagues, thank you for all of you who joined Zoom and asked your many questions. And of course, the viewers on Channel 22 of Facebook page, YouTube channel, and those of you in the diaspora. So some very good news for government contract workers, the loan fund facility, and a capital injection of $10 million by the government to GDB, which will administer the loan. So here's where we end the post-cabinet press briefing for today. Thank you so much for being with us. We will see you again next week.